Chapter 2, Who Doesn't Have a Childhood Sweetheart? After the second semester of their sophomore year, perhaps because they'd matured a little, the tension between Jiang Nian and Shu Chanchan began to ease. But even now, at the start of their senior year, the two still couldn't be called friends. "You lunatic, Jiang Nian!" Su Chanchan stood at the doorway, hands on her hips, glaring like she might throw a shoe at him. "Pounding on my door in broad daylight? Just wait. I'm telling Aunt Lee to beat some sense into you." Jiang Nian wasn't even listening. His gaze was fixed, not on Shu Chanchan, but on the faint, translucent blue panel floating in front of her. As he'd suspected, only he could see it. "Reconnect with your estranged childhood sweetheart, Su Chanchan. Reward, 300 RMB completed." No way. It actually worked? While Su Chanchan was still mid-rant, Jiang Nian's expression shifted from blank to delighted. Her brows furrowed as he stared at her without responding, his eyes slightly unfocused, lost in thought. Creeped out, Su Chanchan took a step back and instinctively clutched her chest. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Then, right in front of her, Jiang Nian pulled out his phone, checked his balance, and suddenly grinned like a maniac. "Yippee!" With a small whoop, he turned and sprinted back across the street to his house, leaving her in stunned silence. "What a weirdo," she muttered under her breath, slamming the door shut. Back in his living room, Jiang Nian was over the moon, staring at his phone as if he'd struck gold. Sure enough, his bank balance had jumped from 305.23 yuan to 605.23 yuan. Transaction note, game tester compensation. At that moment, the system panel shimmered back into view. At 38, you're financially ruined, jobless, divorced, nearly destitute. You rely on your aging parents just to get by. Task, urgent need. Use your first reward to pay off the overdue utilities on your rented apartment. Reward, 500 RMB. Ha! Jiang Nian figured this was another beginner-level task. He didn't actually rent an apartment, but paying the utilities for his family home should count, right? Still, the task stirred something in him. Was his future really that bleak? Buzz. Another 500 yuan landed in his account. The payment went through without issue. The total bill had been a little over 170 yuan, which meant he now had 935.45 yuan left. Not bad for a day's work. Practical as ever, Jiang Nian felt his initial excitement start to fade. 2 payments of 500 yuan weren't enough to raise eyebrows. Banks didn't usually flag transfers under 5,000 a day, but if the amounts got larger, that could be a problem. His account could get frozen, or worse, investigated. He glanced at the sender. Tianguan Gaming Co. Lit. Curious, he looked it up. Surprisingly, the company was real and publicly listed. It even had a job posting for a game tester. Only one opening. Of course, Jiang Nian wasn't foolish enough to believe this was an actual job. No modern tech company had anything remotely close to the floating interface the system used, which meant the system had somehow filled in the cracks of reality. The cover story was airtight, legal, legitimate, perfect. Just as he was reveling in that realization, another task appeared. When you finally want to care for your parents, they may no longer be around. At 38, you realize how old they've become. You head home with a heavy heart and unspoken guilt. Task, prepare a lavish dinner for your parents. Reward, 800 Jiang Nian rubbed his chin thoughtfully. It was still early afternoon, plenty of time to prep a big dinner. If he waited until tomorrow, the timing might not work out. Thanks to the school's anniversary celebration, they had a couple of days off, but he'd need to return for evening self-study tomorrow. Cooking wouldn't be a problem. Nearly everyone in the Jiang family could cook to some extent. His grandfather had been a chef at a Yangcheng restaurant back in the day. His father and uncles had picked up a few tricks too, though their cooking left much to be desired. Grandpa used to say his dad's dishes were like a green onion stuffed up a pig's nose, all show, no flavor. Jiang Nian, however, was the family's culinary prodigy. His grades were average, but he had a real talent in the kitchen. Whether it was stir-fried classics or banquet-style feasts, he handled them with ease. Every summer, he'd spend time at his grandfather's house, learning to cook between bowls of delicious food. By now, he had a solid handful of dishes under his belt, and he made them well. But to qualify as lavish, the ingredients had to be top tier. That afternoon, he headed to the wet market. and came back annoyed. As expected, by mid-afternoon, the good produce was long gone. The vendors, seeing he was young, tried to offload limp greens at inflated prices, only to give him a deal later. Typical. No wonder younger generations preferred supermarkets. These old-school sellers judged customers by their looks and tried every trick in the book. Serves them right when their goods went unsold. By the time he finished shopping and returned home, it was already 4 o'clock. On the kitchen's quartz counter lay a freshly slaughtered deboned Yangshan chicken, a specialty from Guangdong, going for 40 yuan a jin. This one weighed nearly 7. The meat was firm but tender, rich in flavor without being greasy. Absolutely worth the price. He planned to steam it in lotus leaves, a method that kept the chicken juicy and fragrant, and was impressive enough to be called lavish. To round it out, a plate of stir-fried seasonal greens, stir-fried beef, smashed cucumbers, peanuts, and a pot of pork rib soup. Even for 3 people, it was more than enough. Then Jiang Nian thought of the neighbors, specifically Shu Qianqian. Like it or not, she was indeed his childhood sweetheart. Shu Qianqian had grown up in a single-parent household. Her mother had passed away several years ago. Her father, Director Shu, was a renowned expert in reproductive urology at the county hospital, skilled in delicate surgeries and treating more personal conditions. He always wore frameless glasses and carried himself with a calm, professional air. Since his wife's passing, he'd buried himself in work. Still, over the years, he'd quietly supported the Jiang family through their rough patches, and the 2 households remained close. Whenever Jiang Nian's parents cooked a big meal, they always invited Shu Qianqian over. She usually got the sweetest slice of melon, too. Jiang Nian had grown used to that. Naturally, he factored in portions for old Shu and Shu Qianqian. 5 people total, just enough to be generous without going overboard. That evening, Jiang Nian's mother, Li Hongmei, returned from work. She tossed down her bag, tied on her apron, and rushed into the kitchen. "Dinner's almost ready? Good. Go crack open a textbook, would you? You're about to start senior year. I'm telling you, the college entrance exam's like 1,000 troops crossing a single log bridge. One misstep, and you fall." Jiang Nian was lying on the sofa, licking a popsicle and scrolling on his phone. "Yeah, I got it, Mom." "You little rascal," Li Hongmei muttered, drying her hands as she stepped into the kitchen, then stopped cold. She looked at the row of neatly plated dishes on the counter. Her eyes widened. She turned back to her son. "Who made all this?" "I did. Pretty decent, right?" Li Hongmei looked equal parts shocked and impressed. It wasn't that she doubted her son's skills. He'd practically been raised by her father, who'd passed down a chef's lifetime of experience into his grandson. Still, where'd you get the money for all this? That Yangshan chicken alone costs a small fortune. And beef, too? This whole meal must have run a few hundred. Jiang Nian scratched his cheek, a bit sheepish. "Well, didn't I say I made some money playing games?" He held his breath, watching her reaction. Li Hongmei frowned, and the kitchen fell silent, thick with tension.